I was burnt out and was constantly being fed that narrative, I felt like the only way to move forward from that burnout period was just like, okay, invest in myself, move forward, keep it going. When in reality, what I needed was to rest and to be still and not feel as though I had to constantly be moving forward to keep up with the latest and greatest.
Welcome to Overwhelmed and Over It, the podcast where founders come to drop the hustle culture BS and learn how to actually enjoy building their business. I'm your host, Gabs, and I believe your success as a founder shouldn't come at the cost of your sanity. Each week, we bring you real, unfiltered conversation with founders who are figuring it out just like you are. No sugarcoating, no highlight reels, just honest stories and actionable lessons that help you navigate your founder journey with more clarity and confidence. Whether you're building your first company or scaling your fifth, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Oh my gosh, Kat, I am so excited for you to be our founder of the week, to share your story, because I think you and I have so much in common around just like our backgrounds in the sense of life backgrounds, where we came from, where we were at, and why we just had to like figure it the fuck out, like figure out how to get this founder thing working. So Kat, without further ado, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the Overwhelmed and Over It community.
Hello, Gabby. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And yeah, girl, it was a lot of figuring it out on the fly and making it happen. So back in 2019, I was working in the food and beverage industry. I, prior to that, was living in Colorado. I moved to Boise, Idaho for like a fresh start, thinking that I could just run away from all of my issues. Little did I know all of those issues were going to follow me. And I found myself in the position where I was $70,000 in debt, working in a dead end job, feeling completely hopeless. And I took a deep dive into spirituality, manifestation, all of these like personal development resources to really change my life. And it changed my life very quickly. And through sharing my story online, people were really interested in what I was doing and wanted my help. And so I started helping people, and I kind of fell into becoming a life coach on accident. It was never the plan, but it kind of makes sense given how people have always felt like they could open up to me. So I started my business back in January 2020, and that was right before the pandemic. I ended up being able to scale my business to its first six figures within 10 months of starting. And since then have continued to scale and have been able to work with 500 plus women in the manifestation and spiritual coaching space. And now I am serving people through primarily membership community, online and in person in New York City, as well as, like I said, online. And just creating a space for people to be able to explore creating the life of their dreams. And man, oh man, I'm really grateful for it.
Oh my gosh. I just have to say, so I've been a student of your work, and that has turned into us building a great friendship. And one thing I want to say is I don't always talk to spiritual business owners here, because I think when you say the word founder, that can mean anything, any type of business. And so I always like to say, though, one of the things that I think why I gravitated towards your work over some of the other people that I see is you dive deep into the science behind it. Like, this is not just woo-woo bullshit. Like, and I remember, so there's a coach that introduced us through her podcast. And so this is how the world works, right? And I remember when I first signed up to work with you, I told her, I was like, I'm still like woo-woo curious. Like, I'm not really sure about this, but there's something around the way Kat talks about it that I'm like, it actually makes sense to me. My brain understands it. So at least I'm going to go forward with it.
I love that. Yeah, because I feel like it is. There's so much out there in terms of like spirituality and the woo woo stuff that is just fluffy bullshit. And when you peel back the layers on it, or at least you get like a firm grasp on what these different things are, I'm a firm believer that when it comes to business and being a founder is 80% mindset and 20% strategy. Because when you can dial in that strategy, then executing it with the belief system that really allows you to just show up as the best version of yourself is what people are drawn to. And whether you want to see it as mindset or manifestation or any of these other things, it's helped me so much.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think it's a perfect segue into, you've been on this journey for a while now. Like, It's hard to think 2020 was 4 going on 5 years ago. I don't know why. I think that's like for so many of us, we're stuck in that year. It feels like we've never left it. But 4 or 5 years is a very long time when you look at the grand scheme of your entrepreneurship journey. So what's been your biggest kind of light bulb or lesson along the way?
Oh man. To pick just one is I would say that back in the beginning, end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I was constantly kind of being pushed this narrative as well as pushing the narrative of in order to continue to grow, you must invest in yourself in greater and greater and greater and greater capacities. So I got to the place where in the span of probably like 2, 3 months, invested over $50,000 into coaching programs and resources and was kind of at like a burnout place. But because I was burnt out and was constantly being fed that narrative, I felt like the only way to move forward from that burnout period was just like, okay, invest in myself, move forward, keep it going. When in reality, what I needed was to rest and to be still and not feel as though I had to constantly be moving forward to keep up with the latest and greatest and to like stay on top of my market because ultimately that then later in the year kind of sent me into a bit of a spiral where I was like, I don't want to do anything. And
Yeah.
like, I actually kind of want to walk away from my business right now. And it was in that moment of actually being given the opportunity of like, okay, do I walk away from the business or do I give myself permission to just like release the frustration and the resentment and the weirdness that I'm holding around this? That I was actually then brought back to the clarity of how much I love what I'm doing and how much it's really just about the people that I get to connect with and the support that I get to provide for them. That I was reinvigorated by it and brought back to a place where like now I feel better than I ever have before in business. But it was really just like, oh, okay, like you can't keep pushing when you're on empty. Like sometimes you actually just have to stop and like properly rest because pushing forward is actually going to put you further behind.
Oh, girl, I'm here for this message. I am quick to disappear for a week, a weekend, 6 weeks, whatever it may be. It's actually pretty funny because now it's gotten to the point where my husband will just take one look at me and he's like, "What hotel do you want me to drop you off at this weekend?"
Oh
He's
my
like,
god, I love that.
he just knows. He's like, "Oh, has it been like about a quarter since she took her little mini CEO sabbatical? Yep, it's time for her to go away for a couple days."
Absolutely. That's one thing that I like from the moment that I met you. You were saying like, okay, I'm going on a sabbatical soon. And I was like, fuck yes. Like that's incredible that you intentionally like plan it out, but also like take those moments, whether it be a day, a weekend, whatever, to do it. Because when we don't, it's just like, oh my gosh, it can feel so heavy. And like I said, disconnect us from the reason that we started it in the first place and like what you truly want to do.
Yeah, and I think for many of us, we have a similar story in the sense of like entrepreneurship wasn't our high school career path, our chosen path, right? Like we didn't set out to do this. It fell into our lap one way or another and it became part of our journey and we love it. But we are still learning every single day. And I think when you take a step back and look at it, it's like no human is designed to be learning 24/7, 365. And when you're running a business, that's what it is. You don't have weekends off, you don't have holidays off. I mean, you can make that time, you can make that space, but in general, that business is always with you. And so that's, I think, I hear that a lot is when we feel like we don't have the answer, we're like, oh, let's go hire someone who does. Let's just go find
Mm.
someone who has that solution. And like you said, the answer is 90% of the time inside of us, but you got to sit the heck down somewhere and let the answer come up before you
Yep.
start chasing a solution.
Which is so uncomfortable for entrepreneurs because we're so good at moving quickly.
Yes. Which is why I am definitely unemployable these days because I want to move far too fast. I don't want to ask anyone's permission. I don't want to wait because Johnny has done it this way for 20 years. Like, no, I'm not doing any of that anymore in my life.
No. Nope, not at all.
I know that right now your business is going through a little bit of a transition and you're prepping for things to look a little bit different in 2025. Any parts of that that are keeping you up at night right now and bringing on some of that overwhelmed, I'm learning a lot of things right now moments?
Absolutely. When I'm laying in bed at night recently, I have to go to bed telling myself over and over again, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe on a loop because I'm currently making the transition from successfully running my business online for the past almost 5 years to wanting to run it in person. And for all the listeners, I live in New York City and taking my business model from being online to being in person, I feel as though I've had this mental battle of like, oh, if I was doing this in Colorado or if I was doing this somewhere that feels less intimidating in terms of the market with how high achieving and like high level a lot of the individuals are that live here. Um, Actually stepping into like myself and the confidence and the embodiment of like, hell yeah, like I'm worthy and capable and deserving and bring a ton of value regardless of where I am, but especially in New York City has been something that has been taking a lot of courage and bravery.
Oh, well, I'm just going to push you because I want to be first on the wait list for an event because one, give me any excuse to end up in New York and I will be there. But secondly, any excuse to be in a room with you is like top of the cherry for me. So I'm there.
Girl, come on in.
I'm so glad we got to do this, Kat. I feel very fortunate to watch your business grow and change, both as a student of your teachings, but also just as a friend, keeping up with you in the online world. It's a beautiful time, honestly. I think to run a business because we're making friends every day, all over the world. People who are in different spaces than us, but who really make us whole people. I'd love to know, how can our listeners help support you the most right now?
Absolutely. If anybody is interested in tuning into my podcast, it's called That's So Rich. It's all about manifestation and mindset and money and all of those good things. But if you are also wanting to come hang out with me on Instagram or any of the social platforms, it's at Kat Cozadd. That's where you can find out what I have going on. But support in those kinds of ways where you are receiving the value that I'm putting out is beautiful to me because that's what I started this for in the first place, is just to be able to impact somebody no matter what level they're at.
Okay. Non-shameless plug, like just wholeheartedly, if you guys are into this, go listen to the episode around inner safety. I'll link it in the
Mhm.
show notes, Kat, because that episode, when you rebranded your podcast and brought that one back, that was, when you talk about light bulb moments for me as a founder, that was one of those moments that I was like, holy shit. I have been on this journey for 5 years and I've missed this massive piece of work that I needed to be doing. I don't know when that was, like 3, 4 weeks ago, maybe. And I
Yeah,
have been doing it every day since then. So thank you for that. And so I'll make sure that the listeners have direct access to the inner safety piece.
yay, amazing. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Overwhelmed and Over It. Until next time, remember, you're not behind, you're not failing, and you've freaking got this. I'm your host, Gabs, and thank you for listening to Overwhelmed and Over It.